Commission joint hearing for Thursday, September 28th, 2017. I'd like to remind members of the public that the commissions do not tolerate any disruption or outbursts of any kind. Please silence your mobile devices that may sound off during these proceedings. And when speaking before the commissions, if you care to, do state your name for the record. I'd like to take roll for the Planning Commission. Commission President Hillis.
Here.
Commissioner Fong.
Here.
Commissioner Koppel.
Here.
And Commissioner Moore.
Here.
We do expect Commissioner Johnson and Melgar to arrive shortly and Commissioner Richards to be absent today.
And for the Health Commission, Commissioner Chow.
Present.
Commissioner Pading.
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Present.
Commissioner Loyce.
Present.
Commissioner Karshmer.
Present.
And Commissioner Bernal, I believe, is expected.
Very good. Commissioners, you have one item on your special calendar today. For case number 2012.0403W, the California Pacific Medical Center Annual Compliance Statement. This is an informational hearing.
Chow and Hillis and Commissioners, I'm Elizabeth Pearl, Planning Department staff. The item before you is an informational hearing on California Pacific Medical Center's compliance with their development agreement for the 2016 reporting period. This is our fourth annual reporting period. I'm joined here by Joshua Arce of the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development, Krishna Patel of the Department of Public Health, and Marina Coleridge of Health Services Systems.
Are these handouts?
Great, thank you. Okay. Today's hearing is part of the annual review process mandated by the development agreement. The DA requires CPMC to submit an annual report on compliance with the terms of the DA and for the city to evaluate their compliance and hold a public hearing to review the compliance statement and the city report. At today's presentation, you will hear from city staff on CPMC's compliance with key components of the DA that are relevant for the 2016 reporting period, as well as some updates on their projected compliance in 2017. Following this hearing, the Directors of Planning and Public Health will make a determination of whether CPMC is in compliance with their 2016 obligations, and the Directors will issue findings to that effect. A third-party monitor will review the Director's findings and will inform the Board of Supervisors whether he agrees with the Director's determinations. CPMC's development agreement requires them to build 2 new hospitals and 3 new medical office buildings. And by the way, Sutter has renamed the 2 new hospital locations. The Cathedral Hill Hospital is now known as the Van Ness and Geary campus, and St. Luke's will be called the Mission Bernal campus. Construction of both hospitals is now well underway. The development agreement requires that the replacement St. Luke's Hospital be opened within 2 years of opening the Cathedral Hill Hospital. In fact, Sutter is ahead of schedule with their commitment to open the Mission Bernal Campus Hospital, and we anticipate that it will be open by early 2019. In addition, CPMC does regularly provide the required schedule updates. For the 2016 reporting period, there are 11 main action items up for compliance review, as outlined here. These include payments to the city, hiring commitments, healthcare commitments, public improvements, and community outreach. My colleagues will go into many of these in greater detail. As a reminder, the focus of this compliance review and of today's hearing is on calendar year 2016. However, one reporting area, the Workforce and Hiring Program, has a reporting period that doesn't correspond to the calendar year that is used to assess the rest of the commitments. For hiring programs, we will present information from mid-2016 to mid-2017. This is consistent with what we've shown you in past years and also allows us to provide more up-to-date hiring information. In 2016, CPMC was required to make 6 payments for a total of $14 million, all of which have been paid on time. This is comparable to previous years, and CPMC's total payments over the life of the DA will be about $73 million. And one other obligation under the development agreement is a limit on fee-for-service increases by CPMC in its role as a provider for the city's health services system. Marina Coleridge of Health Service Systems will provide an update on that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. The actuarial analysis for the 2015 rate increase as a baseline over 2014 is now in process. In Q3 of this year, Sutter, Blue Shield, and Milliman, who's the actuary that is being engaged to perform the analysis, did reach an agreement regarding the limited use data sets to support the audit. Took about 8 months of wrangling back and forth, but we've got that forward now. And the data was just released to Milliman on this past Friday, September 22nd. The actual analysis will now take approximately 8 weeks on Milliman's end before we'll get any of the first results. Consistent also with the Health Service System's concern regarding Sutter fees, the Health Service Board in May of this year approved a new Blue Shield offering. It's called TRIO, and it's a narrow network which excludes Sutter hospitals. The Health Service System has recently become aware that Sutter is considering a public campaign to encourage our Blue Shield members to remain in the existing Access Plus product and to discourage them from enrolling in the TRIO HMO plan. If such a campaign were to occur, it would certainly be disruptive, and it undermines the health service system's short and long-term goals to ensure that we have affordable quality options. And with that, I now call up Joshua Arce with Workforce for his update.
Morning, Commissioners. Joshua Arce, Director of the City Build Program, here to talk about workforce and some of the contracting outcomes with respect to the project. And out the gate, I'm a new City Build Director here in my 3rd week, but I can already tell you that the team has shared with me they've had a really good working relationship with CPMC, Herrero Bolt, the subs, and our labor and community partners to get these outcomes. So the first slide there, when we look at construction, there's 4 commitments that were made around first source hiring. With respect to construction, the first was a goal that 50% of all new entry-level positions for non-union administrative and engineering candidates on the construction administration and professional services side would be filled with system referrals from workforce development. And that was true in 86% of the cases when a vacancy came available, 32 of 37 opportunities. With respect to new entry-level positions for administrative and engineering internship candidates, more than half were filled, which met the goal of 50% of the entry-level positions to be filled with referrals from our system, and OEWD for internship, 28 of 51. And these are really important success stories that folks are working on more and more about opportunities, not just working in construction with tools, but getting into the back office, and it's something we're working on to really expand at City Build. The third goal is an important goal. It was that, and a goal that we continue to work on, which is 50% of new entry-level union apprentice candidates in construction to be filled with system referrals, also City Build Academy graduates. So far, we're at 30%. On that goal, we have about 30% left on the project, and we've got some folks who have benefited from this component here today. Alicia Powell is a great example of one of our graduates who went in and became a carpenter on this project and is a real success story and some we continue to replicate throughout the life of this project. Fourth was a goal overall of total trade hours to have 30% of all trade hours for union journey level workers and apprentices to be San Francisco resident. Out of just over 3 million total work hours right now, so far 26% of the overall hours have been performed by San Francisco residents, which is a real success story when we look at the fact that we are in the biggest construction boom of any of our lifetimes. Some of the union hiring halls as of last week had 0 out-of-work workers. So it's an interesting time to be doing this work, doubling down on our efforts, make sure no one gets left behind, getting training instructors into the jails, going out, making sure every barrier can be removed with respect to language, formerly incarcerated workers, with respect to education. It gives us an opportunity to continue this work and keep that goal moving up. But I can assure you there's myriad success stories in this partnership. What that looks like visually is what you've got right there in the pie graph. Gives you a sense. As I said, I gave you the statistic across the 3.2 million hours. 26% of total hours been performed by San Francisco residents. When you look at apprenticeship, that's your folks kind of starting out in their career, getting their first shot at a construction career on this project. It's been 36% local residents. Since I've come aboard, we've really enjoyed efforts by some of the subcontractors, such as Southland, to come out to City Build Academy, where we're preparing to graduate 44 community members to go out and become union apprentices. And Southland picked up some of our candidates even before they graduated and brought them out to CPMC. So you're going to see those numbers continue to go up throughout the life of the project. This is something that we found the policymakers and planning commissioners may enjoy to see. That is the San Francisco work hours by neighborhood, so you know where across the city workers are coming out to this project for. And when I say this project, my partner, the compliance manager at CityBuild, who's helped me to prepare these information to share with you, Ken Nim, is here, and he reminded me that it's very important that everybody knows we're talking about aggregate data across all the CPMC sites, including St. Luke's Replacement Hospital, Van Ness Geary, Van Ness Garage, and Medical Office Building. And I'm in a moment going to turn to the local business enterprise program, and at the end I'll pause for questions. We also have staff. If you want some more detailed information that I can't provide, we've got staff on hand to help with that. So on the LBE program, the contracting goals that were laid out and are in place as of July 2017, an overall goal that at least 14% of the cost of all contracts for the workforce projects would be awarded to certified local business enterprises under the DA agreement has been met and exceeded, in fact. If you look at the different projects there under program progress, you can see range from 7% on a project medical office building in which there's active outreach ongoing at this moment, which will mean that number goes up, as high as 24% LBE participation at the replacement hospital at St. Luke's. An overall average across all of these projects is 17%, which is a significant exceeding of the goal. And that means this is a great statistic to look at, that through 2017 July this year, that means close to $200 million in revenue to local business enterprises. And of course, all those resources benefit workers in the local economy and our businesses. And we also have Ryan Young from CMD who can provide some more detailed information about that as well if it's the will of the commission. The last set of materials here, and I want to thank Lowell from our team who's on hand and provided us this information. It's very important. This is the first source hiring for end-use operational jobs at CPMC. There's been a goal that at least 40% of entry-level positions should be filled with system referrals from the OEWD Workforce Development System with our CBO partners. And if CPMC does not fill that goal, 40% of entry-level positions in a hiring year, the deficiency carries over to the next year. And as we've implemented this program, it's had priority neighborhoods. These are our disadvantaged neighborhoods where we're really seeking to address income inequality and fairness of opportunity. And it kind of lays out for you. It also maps to some of the priority areas generally of the health goals. I'm just going to go quickly to the next slide, which lays out that all non-construction hiring goals have in fact been exceeded. There have been no deficits or carryovers with respect to the end-use employment goals. As we're in program year 4, there's been a 59% was the outcome here, hiring of 42 out of 71 total employees who have come in. 42 of the 71 have been from workforce system referrals, which is a major success story. I'm actually delighted to see a friend of mine, Elba Ochomogo, who is here, who came through this program, CAPSA, which is our on-the-job, on the work site in the back office construction administration program, CAPSA. She's a graduate, got on with Herrero Bolton. She's working there, and she's got an amazing story to tell. She's with us here today. And again, Lowell from our team can provide information if you want further detail. Lastly is a program which was a workforce fund grant agreement. In the terms are that CPMC paid $3 million into a workforce fund administered by our partners at the San Francisco Foundation. The fund focuses on barrier removal, job training. It supports our efforts to create success when we make the referral and the placement happens and someone comes on the job. It's supportive services, the dues, expenses around tools, helping get a GED, working to expunge records to support success. And the grantees who've been our educational institutions, nonprofit organizations with a strong track record are listed here. The organizations that were funded to be our partners: FACES SF, Jewish Vocational Service, Self-Help for the Elderly, Success Center, and young community developers. And on this item, Krishna Patel is up next from DPH, but before we go, I believe that's my last slide. Krishna, do me a solid here. Yes, it's my last slide. Any questions on the workforce outcomes?
We may, Mr. Arce, I think we're going to hear the entire presentation and take public comment. And
Got it.
We may come back to you for questions.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
next is Krishna Patel from DPH.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Krishna Patel here from the Department of Public Health. For this section of the presentation, I'm going to provide you with an overview of compliance related to the healthcare commitments as part of the DA. So as part of the DA, Exhibit F provides multiple provisions that relate to healthcare as a way to ensure that CPMC continues to provide their high quality of care to all San Franciscans, especially those who are low income, on Medi-Cal, uninsured, and in general, our diverse communities in San Francisco. So as you'll see on this slide, this is a summary of all the healthcare commitments, and I'm going to go through each one of these in detail in the next few slides. There are 5 baseline commitments, so 5 baseline commitments that carry over or maintain the same levels of care related to community benefit and charity care. There are 3 provisions that are to increase care to our Medi-Cal beneficiaries, our public insurance for low-income residents in San Francisco. There are 2 provisions on the Innovation Fund. That's a fund with a total of $8.6 million that was contributed across 4 years to help fund community-based services and programs in San Francisco. And then there are the 5 additional healthcare provisions in the DA that span multiple topics. These can span from subacute care services and go through culturally and linguistically appropriate standards. All of these DA provisions on healthcare help provide seamless and accessible care to San Franciscans. And like I mentioned, I'm going to go through each one in detail. So this slide provides you with the baseline healthcare commitments. These are the 5 that I mentioned earlier to ensure that same level of care is maintained since the DA. It also includes CPMC's 2016 performance and DPH's determination on whether CPMC is compliant on each one of these. So I'm going to start and go through. The first one in 2015 and now in 2016 as well, CPMC has exceeded the DA requirement to care for 30,445 charity care or Medi-Cal beneficiaries. Just to note, charity care refers to health care that's provided to those who cannot afford to pay and without the expectation of reimbursement. So in 2016, this number, the charity care or CPMC cared for, was 43,370 unduplicated patients. This second provision is related to community benefit. And community benefit is unreimbursed costs that CPMC incurs to help with community health in San Francisco. In 2016, CPMC again exceeded the $8 million community benefit requirement by providing over $12 million in community benefit. And the compliance for these first 2 provisions have been verified by a third-party audit as well. So this third provision and fourth as well are related to charity care policies. So although this requirement now has shifted, at first it was to maintain their charity care policies through the end of 2015 that were the same as when it was in 2011. And it's now shifted to maintain charity care policies in compliance with California law and to ensure that charity care patients have access to services. And CPMC is in compliance. Their charity care policies do comply with California law, but it is important to note that their charity care policy that was provided in 2016 has not changed from the one that they provided to us last year as well. And this last provision on the baseline commitments is for CPMC to continue their support for Bayview Child Health Center. This support has been consistent since the DA, and since the ownership has transferred to South of Market Health Center, CPMC has additionally provided their operations grant for 5 years. They've invested over $1 million. They've helped transfer assets, all to help with sustainability, and they also serve as the clinic's specialty and hospital partner still. So these three provisions under the DA are relevant to Medi-Cal, which is our public insurance program for low-income San Franciscans. Especially with the Medi-Cal expansion that happened in 2014 under the Affordable Care Act, Medi-Cal is an increasingly important means of coverage for San Franciscans. So I'm going to go through these three provisions as well. So the first provision under Medi-Cal is for CPMC to continue to participate in the Medi-Cal Managed Care Program with San Francisco Health Plan, and they have continued to do so in 2016. The second is for CPMC to assume responsibility for 5,400 new Medi-Cal beneficiaries, and they had met that requirement in 2014. Currently, CPMC has a total of 33,372 beneficiaries at the end of 2016. This third requirement for Medi-Cal is for CPMC to serve 1,500 of these new Medi-Cal beneficiaries through a partnership with the Tenderloin serving primary care provider that's able to directly contract with Medi-Cal Managed Care. Currently, no such provider exists, so instead, there has been a partnership with CPMC NEMS, and they've brought in St. Anthony's as their primary care provider. And at the end of 2016, this partnership had 115 members and currently has 189 members. Just to note, additionally, $35,000 more were awarded to St. Anthony's through the Innovation Fund to increase their outreach and awareness. So related to the Innovation Fund, there are two provisions in the DA that discuss this. So first, CPMC is required to make payments between 2013 and 2017 that total $8.6 million. And the payment for 2016, which is $1.725 million, was made, and they've are compliant with this. The second provision describes how the funds will be used. So this Innovation Fund is administered by the San Francisco Foundation, and CPMC, along with DPH and the San Francisco Foundation, sit on a committee to grant awards that support our community clinics, behavioral health, and other community-based services and programs. In 2016, the committee awarded grants totaling just under $1 million, so $985,000 to a total of 5 organizations. These organizations and awards will help support programs to reduce incarceration and improve mental health services, community engagement and capacity building, transportation to our sobering center, and the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative that's a part of the Tenderloin, and the last one will be to help the merger of the Women's Health Clinic, or the Women's Community Clinic, with Health Right 360. So the remaining healthcare provisions in the DA cover multiple topics that I mentioned. The first provision that's on the slide requires CPMC to help develop subacute care proposals. Subacute care, again, is a form of skilled nursing care, but for patients that require higher levels of services, such as ventilator care, people with tracheotomies, complex wound care. And they were also required to present this to the Health Commission. This obligation was completed in early 2016 with the presentation from PAC where am I at? Excuse me. Oh, around subacute care services. Sorry, lost my train of thought. But there has been a lot of discussion around subacute care services, and I wanted to mention that this is the only provision in the DA around subacute care services. I will discuss a little bit more around subacute care in my next slide, though. This second provision in the DA that I'm going to mention is around the integration of staff across CPMC's campuses. So CPMC did report in 2016 that they now have a single integrated medical staff across all their campuses, including St. Luke's. This next commitment is for CPMC to continue in the San Francisco Health Improvement Partnership, which is a successor coalition of the Community Benefits Partnership, and they have continued to do so in 2016. The next commitment is for CPMC to continue their partnership with Chinese Hospital. CPMC has maintained their hospital agreements for Covered California, commercial HMO, and to high-risk OBGYN populations. Last year, there were some questions, though, around this obligation, and those have now been resolved in a manner that was agreeable to both parties. This last provision around the DA is on the National Culturally and Linguistically Appropriate Services Standards. It is CPMC policy to deliver services in accordance to these mandates by class. So although CPMC is in compliance with this provision, commissioners have expressed concerns in the past hearings as to the cultural and linguistic appropriateness of services, particularly that were related to the St. Luke's Diabetes Clinic. And to address these, DPH and CPMC staff met in 2016, and the meeting resulted in recommendations. And some of these were to increase Spanish-speaking staff, provide Spanish group classes, hire reception staff, and integrate their advisory council for Health First program. So although some of these topics that are on this slide have been addressed briefly, I wanted to take this time to address some of these in a little more detail. The first, again, related to those class standards, so culturally and linguistically appropriate services related to the St. Luke's Diabetes Clinic. So after the meeting with DPH and CPMC in April of 2016, CPMC has reported some progress related to those recommendations. CPMC hired .8 FTE, a Spanish-speaking RD, a registered dietitian, and certified diabetes educator. CPMC has also confirmed that their Spanish group classes began at the end of August in 2017. And CPMC has reported that they will not be hiring reception staff for the diabetes clinic. They have instead added a question to their bilingual patient survey that asks whether access is limited due to the lack of reception staff and reception area. Their early data, so their data from 2017, and this is from January to June, with 36 participants, did suggest that patients did not feel that access was limited or restricted due to this. And lastly, the Advisory Council is now within their Sutter Health Diabetes Education Network, and St. Luke's staff do attend these advisory committee meetings. CPMC has also reported that the Health First program and St. Luke's Diabetes Clinic continue to collaborate and serve these patients. The second key healthcare issue is related to the skilled nursing facility and subacute care services at St. Luke's. So SNF, or subacute skilled nursing facility, is a step down from acute care, but patients still require these nursing services. And as I mentioned before, subacute is a type of skilled nursing, but for medically fragile patients. So these are people who are on vents and trachs and require additional care. So St. Luke's SNF and subacute care units were originally planned to close in October of 2017, which would have resulted in all the patients being transferred mainly out of county. The SNF and subacute services were not originally part of the new hospital. The resolution with CPMC has been that CPMC will continue to care for the remaining 24 subacute care patients, and if there are any remaining SNF patients, since that's typically a short-term stay, within their CPMC system and in San Francisco. So although the DA doesn't require CPMC, only requires that CPMC develop proposals related to subacute care services, we did want to include this as a key healthcare issue because there has been a lot of discussion around it. And with that, I'll turn that back over to Elizabeth.
By the way, can I have the screen again, please?
SF thank you.
This is a photo of the new Van Ness and Geary campus hospital. As you can see, there's been a tremendous amount of progress and further completion since we were last here in February. So to summarize, as you've heard from my colleagues, Sutter Health is generally in compliance with the requirements of the CPMC development agreement. And in particular, there has been progress on hiring goals, a substantial increase in local business contracting, and improved services to patients and the community at the Mission Bernal campus at St. Luke's, including retaining those skilled nursing facility beds. Ongoing areas for improvement in the coming year include enrollment of Medi-Cal beneficiaries at St. Anthony's in the Tenderloin, and construction and hiring of union journeymen and apprentices. However, the information we've received so far for 2017 indicates progress in those areas and continuing compliance across the development agreement requirements. Staff's recommendation to the Directors of Public Health and Planning is to find CPMC in compliance for the 2016 reporting year. And finally, I'd like to note that we heard the Commissioner's requests at previous hearings to tighten up our review timeline. Although the process outlined in the development agreement is quite lengthy, my colleagues across all of the departments involved and with the cooperation of CPMC have worked closely together, and I'm pleased to say that we have completed the city report 3 weeks ahead of our deadline mandated in the DA, and we've reached this hearing a good couple of months earlier than in previous years. As I mentioned, the next step is the director's findings, and we expect to have that next month, and the annual review process completed, in fact, before the end of the calendar year for the first time. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Jim Maxud from CPMC. He'll give you his presentation, and then we'll be ready for public comments and your questions.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Jim Maxud, the Vice President of External Affairs for Sutter Health's Bay Area. Thank you for having us here this morning, and thank you to staff for all the information provided. We share in thanking them for all the hard work to tighten up this process so that we can be here sooner to answer your questions and share good information with you. So today we also brought recent photos of the projects so everyone could see. These are 2 photos of the Van Ness campus, one from the corner of Franklin and Post and the other from Van Ness. As you can see, substantial progress has been made. This is the Van Ness MOB, which if you've driven up and down Van Ness recently, that steel has risen quite quickly out of the ground. And is also on track to be completed on time, just around the same time as the opening of the Van Ness Hospital. And then this is a look at the Mission Bernal campus, which is now getting our particular attention as we are less than 1 year out from the opening of that new facility. So we're very pleased with the progress at that campus. I'll share a little more information with you in a moment. This is our transition timeline. So from now to approximately 2020, what this demonstrates is the coordinated transitions that will happen from our existing campuses to our new enterprise that will be in San Francisco. It starts with the transition from primarily St. Luke's to the new Mission Bernal campus in August of 2018. There will be some services from PAC and Cal that will also move to Mission Bernal, so there's a small amount of transition there. The major transition from PAC and Cal happens in early 2019 when the Van Ness campus opens. So those are the 2 main hospital transitions that are going to happen within a reasonably short window of time. And then on the back end of that, what we'll do is be taking additional services that currently are at our Pacific Heights campus and shifting some of them over to the medical office building at Van Ness, or even to the down to Mission Bernal. Certain services have to be timed in a certain way. And then finally, some remaining services at Cal will also be transitioned to either the 2 new acute care settings or back to the Pacific Heights campus, which will convert to be outpatient only. So a very complicated series of transitions that means between now and 2020, every aspect of our enterprise in San Francisco will be impacted by this transition in a positive way. This is a little hard to read on the screen. You've got a copy of it in front of you. What we wanted to share with you here today were some distinctions of those services that are going to be placed across San Francisco at the different campuses. This is not an exhaustive list of every single service that's going to be delivered as inpatient and outpatient and in the hospital versus the medical office buildings. But what we wanted to show you here today were some of the distinctions and key points. So Pacific Heights, that campus stands down as an acute facility and becomes outpatient only. So you'll see that we've placed things there like cancer services, infusion and mammography and imaging and others that will support that activity. Davies, just below that, continues. That's our campus that will probably recognize the least amount of change in this transition. All the services that they offer there today will continue. A significant change will be that much of our orthopedic service that happens right now at the Cal campus will shift over to the Davies campus. Up at Van Ness, that will be our, the shift from Cal, our pediatric service that's there will shift to Van Ness. Our transplantation service that exists now at the Pacific campus, that will shift to Van Ness. So those are some of the large service lines that happen at a different campus now that will move over to Van Ness. And then down at Mission Bernal, you have new cardiac and pulmonary rehab that will be centered there. Our community center of excellence will be there. The senior center of excellence will be there. We'll continue our PEDS after hours clinic that is there now. And we're also going to be bringing some of the orthopedic surgical volume down to the Mission Bernal campus, as that probably will support some of the other medical services that are going to be primarily centered at Mission Bernal. So we're excited to have this kind of roadmap figured out. I'm sure that between now and the opening of the new campuses, there's going to still be some changes and shifting. We hope not, but we know how this goes. And again, this is a partial listing, and we did note on here, just so it didn't cause any confusion or concern, that the subacute census that we have committed to keeping at CPMC at one of our facilities, we are still in the process of figuring out where that will be located. That's why it's not listed on here. Okay, community engagement. We wanted to reflect, we've talked in years previous about community engagement, and that's focused a lot on conversations with one aspect of the community, the coalition, and some specific questions they had. We wanted to reflect kind of a broader view of community engagement. And if we're looking at construction workforce hiring, operational workforce hiring, the community partnerships, through our community benefit programs or community relations, we have a very thorough schedule of community engagement on all of these fronts. So I'm not going to go through each one of these specifically. You have the material in front of you, but we wanted to make sure that we were reflecting kind of the very broad, comprehensive nature of community engagement that exists across all our campuses and all of these programs that are commitments in the DA. So 2016 or 17 key activities and current priorities. We are glad to be found in compliance on all commitments. You've heard some of this information from staff. The replacement hospital at St. Luke's is ahead of schedule. Again, that's an August 18 open. We've exceeded the unduplicated lives commitment, remained over the managed Medi-Cal target. We maintain the partnership with NEMS and St. Anthony's. We did exceed the operational workforce hiring goals, and we're continuing all our efforts in good faith to exceed the construction workforce hiring goals. We continue to promote and push and grow the number of our employees who are taking advantage of the transportation subsidy. It's hard to get people out of their cars, but we're trying. We're doing everything we can, from transportation fares to weekly promotion of the benefits of that program. And then we will make our last payment to the city. And this last bullet, I've got one last slide, because we are proud of the investment that this development agreement represents for the economic impact to San Francisco. So we're still a year out from the opening of the first hospital. We haven't even started on the part of our efforts, which is the building of the MOB at St. Luke's, but we're already approaching, $250 million in economic impact. You saw the middle number there in Mr. Arce's presentation, but if you look at the union wages that have been applied to San Francisco residents, along with the revenue from the LBEs, the total impact just to date to San Francisco represents $236 million. So a substantial impact and benefit from all the hard work that went into the negotiation and details of the development agreement. So that's what we have for you here today. I'm joined by colleagues who will serve as subject matter experts as we have questions on any of the specific elements of the program and compliance. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Matsoud. Thank you, city staff, for the thorough presentation. We realize a lot of work has gone into this over the past year, so we appreciate this opportunity to discuss this. We'll open first up to public comment, and I've got a number of speaker cards. You're welcome to line up on the screen side of the room and speak in any order. Teresa Palmer, Terry Waters, Alicia Powell, Michael Lyon, Elba Ochimogo, Dawn Estorga, Linda Rosario, Sherry Gropper.
And I'm wondering, President, whether we didn't actually get the CPMC presentation, so whether they had copies, because the number of services and so forth that they spoke to on the slides would be very helpful in terms of our listening to the public.
President Chow, I'm informed that the city just received that presentation this morning. We will make it available to all of the commissioners, and we'll also put it on our website.
Thank you.
Good. If we could have you line up on the screen side of the room here, just so we don't block that door, and go ahead and approach the podium in any order. You don't have to do it. Yeah, and we'll have 3 minutes available for public comment.
If your name's been called, feel free to approach the dais.
Go ahead.
You may submit your public testimony in any order.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. We are a group from Swindell's Alzheimer's Residential Care Unit and prefer to speak in sequence. Understood it wasn't so important that our names be called in advance.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yep. Feel free.
I have letters for you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ann Ludwig, and my husband, Carl, who is 78 years old, has advanced Alzheimer's and is a patient at Irene Swindell's Alzheimer's Residential Care Unit at CPMC's California Street campus. 3 years ago, Carl, who was a marathon runner, could no longer live in our very San Francisco apartment with its 35 steps in or out. We were fortunate to find a place for him at Swindell's, a model of care for people with dementia, and centrally located so that I can visit him daily. We of Swindell's Family Council learned in August that CPMC intends to close in about a year this 20-year-old unit that provides urgently needed care for up to 24 disabled San Franciscans. Alzheimer's and related dementias are fatal diseases that affect every muscle in one's body and render one helpless. Our city needs more facilities like Swindell's, not fewer, to care for all of us. CPMC has promised to find comparable placement for our loved ones when they are evicted from their Swindell's home, but there are no placements comparable to Swindell's experience and expertise. And moving these vulnerable individuals is medically contraindicated. Moving Carl is my worst nightmare. We cannot agree to something that would destabilize our loved one's health, and have written to Dr. Browner to protest this decision in strong terms. Copies of that letter have been provided to you. We feel that CPMC should continue their leadership role in care of frail elderly San Franciscans, not eliminate an outstanding facility for their care. We call on the city to assure that this community benefit is not withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ludwig. Next speaker, please.
Thank you very much, Commissioners, for seeing us. My name is Dawn Astorga. My mother is also a member of Swindells. There are 22 people there. I don't think the move is the issue, because as long as they're moved together and they're allowed to stay together with the staff who loves them, the staff mourns when one of them dies. And as I said, there are only 22 of them. They neglected to mention that basically they'll be putting them out on the street. When I was at the meeting, they said maybe they would help us, but they didn't have any facilities in mind. The staff is their family. When we're not there, they know them. These people eat dinner together, 4 of them at a table every night. CPMC has done a wonderful job of taking care of them. But what will we do with them? Most of us are working, tax-paying members of the community. We have relatives who cannot be left alone. They all have a different form of dementia or Alzheimer's. As we said at the supervisors meeting, all these pediatric care and birthing centers are beautiful, but the population of San Francisco is going up. Please help us not have our 22 relatives turned out on the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Victoria Kleeman, and my mother has been a resident at Swindells Memory Care Facility for nearly 2 years. Swindells is under the umbrella and auspices of CPMC. If I had one wish for all of you today, it would be that you knew my mother before she suffered a massive hemorrhagic stroke in the right frontal lobe of her brain 3.5 years ago. She had been a brilliant, adventurous, vital, and engaged human being, and I must say, the best mother on the planet Earth. Before coming to Swindells, she suffered many, many physical and cognitive traumas at other facilities. I want to ask all of you to hold in your mind's eye right now the person that you love most in this world. Imagine that they are no longer able to speak, to walk, to give you a hug or a gentle kiss. In addition, imagine that you are no longer able to care for them and that your finances are slowly but surely being exponentially devastated. Then there's an answer to a prayer. It's called Swindells. Swindells gave my mother a sense of normalcy and consistency and unparalleled loving care. In fact, without CPMC's mission statement, we might not be cognizant of the fact that they have included a continuum of care commitment in what they are to do. Finally, let's all realize how important it is to do the right thing. The inequality between the treatment of races in our past and in our present is abhorrent. The inequality between the treatment of the sexes in the past and the present is abhorrent. The inequality of treatment between those who are younger and are elderly is abhorrent. Please do the right thing. Do not allow our loved ones and the future elderly citizens of our beloved San Francisco to be pushed aside. Their ability to maintain their dignity as well as their lives essentially is in your hands. I thank you for your time, your attention, and your compassion. We are all depending on you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kleeman. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Linda Rosario. My mother is Penny Fong, who will soon be 103. And she's been at Irene Schwindel for almost 2 years. She's adjusted very well. She's sleeping well now, where she has had sundowner syndrome, where she was up most of the night and sleep during the day. She's happy. She eats well. She is the patient at Irene Schwindel, which is at the CPMC campus. Over 20 years, the Schwindel family made a very generous contribution to fund dementia care. This is now part of CPMC Foundation. If CPMC closes Schwindel, it will be ignoring the wishes of Schwindel family and the many donors who give with inspiration by the Schwindel family generosity. We urge you to call on CPMC to respect those wishes and to keep the Schwindel program open. At this point, we have no funding for my mother's care pretty soon, and to seek other facility will cost $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a month, which we do not have. And so with Schwindel gone, I do not know what to do next. So I thank you for listening to what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. I am Phil Ferris. My wife, Mary Ann, is a resident at Swindells Center, and she's been there a little over 3 years. During that time, her physical capabilities have degenerated, and she is now totally wheelchair bound, and she cannot put sentences together, so any speech is one word kind of an answer. She gets wonderful care when she's there, and that's the main issue that I have. I went through a rather laborious task of finding out what was the best facility for her 3 years ago, and Swindells was far and above the best one, and I certainly don't want to go through that again. There's a loving staff that takes care of all of her bathing, clothing, and feeding, and she takes care of her sanitary needs and does a lot to make her feel comfortable. If she were to leave somewhere else, these people who know her well would no longer be able to take care of her. If she cannot speak, so if she has some problem, she cannot explain it. But the staff at Swindells knows her well enough to know if she's got these problems and can do something about it. I urge you to take whatever actions are necessary to preserve this center. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sherry Gropper. My husband, Dr. Mark Gropper, was a patient of CPMC's at the Swindells Alzheimer's Residential Unit until the 29th of July this year. He died there. I was at his bedside, and we were surrounded by his loving caregivers. Although it pains me to speak publicly, I'm glad to have this opportunity to say this is the way it should have been. Alzheimer's and related dementias are fatal, deadly diseases. The question of what happens to Swindells is larger than these families involved that you've heard today. San Francisco needs to assure good quality, affordable, residential care for its fragile, demented elders. This will require not only city officials and city programs, it will also require the active and committed participation of its private hospitals. We urge you to call on CPMC not to walk away from this critical task, but to come to the table and be a key part of the solution. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Gropper. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Alicia Powell. I am a City Build graduate, Psycho 16. I am also a San Francisco resident. The CPMC Van Ness and Gary project has allowed me to see the progress that I've made in my career choice as a carpenter. I'm proud to say that going forward, I will be able to take advantage of the diversity that San Francisco has to be able to confidently say that I will be able to run work as a female African-American carpenter and it won't be a problem. I have medical training in physical therapy and massage therapy, so my Hippocratic oath I am taking very seriously to make sure that I'm doing my part and that those around me are doing their part to build quality care hospital for not just my city, but for my family, for my community, which is important to me for my family legacy. My father is a vet. My grandmother worked in medical fields. She was a medical records clerk at Southeast Community in the Bayview, as well as the Soma, Barbara Powell. So this opportunity is awesome. The knowledge and skill that City Build has given me is allowing me the opportunity for growth, not just for myself, but those around me. And to see it and be a part of it is a blessing. I appreciate the opportunity to have the program available. I appreciate the opportunity for CPMC to acknowledge that the community is a part of these projects and to deal with great care to make sure that we feel that. And I greatly appreciate that. And I look forward to moving forward as a San Francisco Union Carpenter of Local 22. And just thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Next speaker, please, and I'll call some additional names. Kim Tavaglione, Tony Rivera, Mark Aronson, Ken Barnes, Mercedes Winfield. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Elba Ochomogo. I'm a CAPSA 13 graduated. I want to tell you my story because hearing Josh talk about the percentage of success of this program, I want to give the human part of that stat. So I immigrated to the United States 4 years ago, and for personal reasons, I had to stay here. But before that, I was raised and born in Nicaragua. I went to college and I had a degree in economics, and I was granted a scholarship and had a master's degree in agricultural economics in Taiwan. And when I came to this country, the circumstances take me into work into a retail store. And but I was not satisfied. I felt like I could do better. So this program, CAPSA, granted me the opportunity to improve myself and improve my family situation. And CPNC encourage diversity, encourage all people that English is a second language as part of this project. And I'm so proud to be part of a San Francisco resident of this amazing project who supports minorities and communities as Hispanic I belong to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ochomogo. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Terry Waters, and after hearing all these heartfelt stories this morning, really makes me realize how important my role is. I am part of City Build. I'm a graduate, Cycle 21. I now work at the St. Luke's Project. I've been there for 2 years. I've only been in San Francisco for 3 years, but my first year, I was one of them low-income families. I was on Medi-Cal. I needed that general assistance. City Build and Herrero Bolt gave me the opportunity to step out of that and continuously step up in my life. I no longer need assistance. I can now give assistance to San Francisco. And building this hospital, I don't know, everybody wants a hospital, but it's very difficult to build one. So it's a lot of hard work. I've learned a lot. I've got a lot of certifications. I'll be making my journeyman in about 2 weeks. So I put in 4,000 hours of work. I love what I do. I love San Francisco. I love the idea that I'm giving back. A city build is so important to San Francisco. And these companies, Herrera Bolt, that is willing to be in partnership is such an advantage for San Francisco. So I'm very proud to say that I'm a part of that, and I hope to do so for another 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
My name is Mercedes Winfield. I am a San Francisco resident of 34 years. I had the pleasure to get in contact with a group and a company like CPMC through the First Sources. I have my unit coordinator certificate. I'm per diem now, but I'm still working 40 hours a week. Plus, this organization through CPMC, the Success Center, has changed my entire life. Me learning different things. I'm now training for the ICU unit clerks. I am moving ahead. I'm now putting away for my son's college education. This project has opened so many doors for me, and I know more. I just wanted to say thank you guys. This team that you guys put together for the San Francisco residents that meet the qualifications, I think was an awesome opportunity. So I just came to say thank you. CPMC is a great organization to be a part of. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Winfield. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, commissioners and directors. My name is Ascanio Piamelli. I'm a professor of law and associate dean at UC Hastings College of the Law and director of its Community Economic Development Clinic, which has long represented San Franciscans for housing, healthcare, jobs, and justice. And other coalition members will speak after I do. My understanding is that the public comments that I submitted on behalf of the coalition are attached as the last item in your materials today. And in those comments, I indicated, this is actually the fourth year that the coalition has made comments on CPMC's self-report of compliance with the DA, and we have endeavored, again, to indicate where we think the city report could effectively focus so that this process would not just be a box-checking exercise of compliance, 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 but that it could be a forward-looking public dialogue where we really look at not just has CPMC complied with each individual item on the DA, but what can we foresee as the problems going forward, and how can we have a discussion about what sorts of issues should we focus on? We weren't successful in that effort to get the city report to pay attention to the issues, but we're resilient, and there are a number of us who will raise some of the specifics that haven't yet been focused on. So the one that I will focus on now has to do with care for Tenderloin residents on Medi-Cal managed care. The commitment is that 1,500 Tenderloin residents should get services. A medical services organization, an MSO, was created with NEMS and St. Anthony's, and you heard that it has 115 members at the end of 2016. It has 189 members. We would continue to urge the Department of Public Health and CPMC to step up their outreach in the community to talk with Tenderloin residents about what are your health care options, what are the advantages of the various options that Tenderloin residents have. If an issue is that CPMC's facilities are too far away, we would invite the Innovation Fund to consider funding transportation to make that possible.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Dr. Teresa Palmer. I'm a geriatrician in private practice, and I'm also have been working actively with the coalition because our views are the same. There's two things I want to do today. One, I want to talk to the development agreement, and the other one is I want to talk about the provision of the refusal to provide nursing home care. In the charity care statement, there's a number, 43,370 unduplicated lives. There's a stunning lack of detail, and I have many questions. One of these, are these all Medi-Cal patients, and are these lives the Medi-Cal shortfall? Who are these patients? Did they arrive by ambulance or did they walk in? Are they acute hospital care shortfalls based on $25 per aspirin charge? Just 2 years ago, there were less than 30,000 patients. What's working and how did you get to the 43,000 number? We really need more details. CPMC's history is to abide by the letter of the law, maybe spin it a little, but do as little as it can with these kinds of patient outreach functions. And we just need a lot more detail in order to understand what's working and what's not working. And I would urge this joint commission to ask for these. My other purpose in being here is to point out that the violations of the CPMC mission statement, as evidenced by the withdrawal of skilled nursing, including subacute care in the city, which is part of a larger citywide crisis that's been caused by shutdowns of hospital-based nursing home beds. The most egregious, of course, is the 40-bed subacute unit at St. Luke's. The 23 to 25 remaining patients were given a reprieve because of blowback and publicity. Since then, CPMC has sabotaged the Family Council. I was surprised to find out Mr. Massoud was a vice president because he was acting as a bouncer at the elevators in the family meeting before last, refusing to let advocates, reporters, and legislative aides from the Board of Supervisors into the meeting, even though they had been invited by the family, and the family had asked for the meeting, which is illegal. And there's not only been active sabotage of the Subacute Family Council, there has been...
Thank you, Dr. Palmer.
Dr. Palmer,
There's systematic understaffing now that's resulting in increased morbidity at the subacute unit. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Commissioners, Director, my name is Ken Barnes, and I'm a physician who practiced at St. Luke's for over 30 years. The issue I wish to address is that of culturally and linguistically appropriate services. On March 14th, 2014, without any prior notice, CPMC fired all of its bilingual and bicultural staff at the St. Luke's Diabetes Center, including the longtime nurse director and administrative assistant. What was disturbing about this action was that the patients of the center were largely Spanish-speaking. We know from the former director that 52% of the patients had diabetes of pregnancy or gestational diabetes. Of these, 66% were monolingual, Spanish-speaking, and 70% of all the visits were for gestational diabetes. We would like to know the impact of those firings. Patients must now make appointments remotely by telephone because CPMC has refused, as was mentioned by Ms. Patel, to hire back an administrative assistant. has there been a diminution of services because of the lack of access for Spanish-speaking patients now as compared to prior to the 2014 layoffs? This is not difficult. What was the number and percent of Spanish-speaking patients in early 2014, and what are those numbers now? What about the numbers with patients in gestational diabetes? Beyond this, there are two further points. As Director Garcia and Lou Gerardo, the mediator of the development agreement, have asked, has CPMC established a true community engagement process seeking to deeply understand community needs? We think this process must be carefully monitored. And secondly, in terms of the class standards, and again, as Director Garcia has asked, do all of CPMC's hospitals and services have enough bilingual and bicultural staff and reflect the population which they serve? CPMC needs to be much more purposeful in its efforts to provide the highest quality of culturally competent care. Finally, the subacute unit at St. Luke's, which serves largely people of color, has been stopped from closing due to the efforts of the patients' families and our community and labor coalition. We want to hold CPMC and the other San Francisco hospitals, including the Department of Public Health, accountable for developing a plan to provide future subacute services, thereby guaranteeing that the most frail and vulnerable among us, including people of color, are given the best care possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Gordon Marr. I'm the Director of Jobs with Justice and also a member of San Franciscans for Healthcare, Housing, Jobs, and Justice. I wanted to start by thanking the family members of the Swindells Alzheimer unit, as well as the St. Luke's subacute unit for speaking up so passionately, about their loved ones. And also thank the health commissioners and other city officials for doing everything that you can to ensure the continuing high quality care for those patients in both of those units, even if it falls outside of the specific language of the development agreement. And with respect to the development agreement, our Community Labor Coalition is pleased that Sutter CPMC has improved its performance in meeting its baseline commitment to serve Medi-Cal and charity care patients, and also its percentage target for filling entry-level operations positions with applications referred through the first source hiring process. But as Ascanio said, we would like to see more detailed reports and explanations so that this annual compliance review process becomes more than a formulaic box checking process, and it can really be used to facilitate an informed public dialogue on progress and remaining impediments. Not just to the specific numbers, but really the full promise and spirit of the development agreement that we all worked so hard to achieve back in 2013. With respect to the workforce provisions of the development agreement, for example, we urge the city to start tracking the retention rate of entry-level hires and through the city's first source referrals program. Retention of new hires is just as important as the hire itself, and it's an extremely important part of the overall spirit of the workforce component. And tracking retention is especially important for the entry-level hires because the vast majority of them are hired on an on-call sort of on-call provisional basis. So it's really unclear how many of these hires eventually become full-time permanent positions. Additionally, we urge the city to have CPMC explain the dramatic reduction in overall entry-level hires that we've seen. So the total number of entry-level hires has dropped from 220 in 2015 to 127 in 2016 to 72 in 2017. That's a projected number based on the hires so far. So we would like to see an explanation of those hires, especially in light of continuing reports of understaffing in CPMC facilities, particularly at the CPMC, the St. Luke's subacute unit. We've heard stories from the family members and the staff there that there's there's major understaffing that's been happening. So we thank you
Mr.
for your
Moore.
attention.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Michael Lyon, I lived for 40 years in Bernal Heights, fought to keep St. Luke's open when CPMC tried to close it. I worked for 15 years at San Francisco General Hospital. The August 6, 2013 Health Commission summary of the DA commitments, of the commitments in the DA for subacute care said, quote, CPMC will work with DPH and San Francisco hospitals to develop protocols for providing subacute services. Okay, over 600 DPH patients have been sent out of county in the last 11 years because CPMC refused to take anyone from the outside CPMC into its subacute unit. How on earth can you say that CPMC has fulfilled its agreement on this? CPMC dominates the Post-Acute Care Council, which is tasked with finding a solution to getting more SNF beds. But what have they done? Absolutely nothing has happened in that time. And as a matter of fact, what the PACC is supposed to says that they're going to work on is people with dementia. And yet CPMC is planning to close down Swindell. CPMC must admit new subacute patients. It is not enough to let the care for the current patients to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle and eventually disappear. CPMC has a long history of ratcheting down care by staffing smaller amounts of people and saying that new patients can't get accepted. This hearing really is a gigantic whitewash of this whole process of for-profit health care in San Francisco. And you can see that it's falling apart. You guys may whitewash CPMC's role in all this, but we are not going away.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Commission. My name is Tony Rivera, and I am a born and raised San Francisco resident and a current resident of San Francisco. And my sister, Sandy Rivera, is a subacute patient at St. Luke's. And excuse me, I'm not a professional speaker, so I might be a little nervous. I just wanted to say that congratulations, CPMC. You're making a lot of money at the expense of San Francisco residents, me and my family being some of them. You know, I came here on the behalf and to represent the subacute patient that isn't even important enough for CPMC to have plans for, as mentioned by Jim Madsuit. But I'm sad to hear that they're also displacing the subacute unit that I just found out today. I think CPMC should be so proud of that. You know, I'm sorry to hear about the Alzheimer's unit, and I'm also sorry for all the members at the subacute unit, a lot of those members being my family. You know, I also hear that there's $250 million that you mentioned, and there's no room at the Mission Bernal Heights, no plans, nothing for subacute. I can't believe that. We need subacute patients at St. Luke's to transfer over to the Mission Bernal Heights campus. It's just hundreds of feet away. That would be the best ideal place for them. They talk about transportation for the workers. What about transportation for the family members that live there? You know, we absolutely need CPMC to allow future subacute patients. We need them for the future residents of San Francisco, people that live there, people that are getting older, people that are getting sick, people that are getting into accidents. And this is the last one left. What's going to happen when it's gone? You know, and CPMC, you know, really, please stop preying on the vulnerable, the Alzheimer's, the people that have trachs and machines that need to survive. Why do you forget about them? You know, why are you not allowing them to stay? Why are you not allowing other people to come in? You know, and please, for once, let us know what's happening with subacute. You keep saying that you don't have any idea what's going to happen to them. Well, how do you think the subacute patients feel about that? They're already in critical, state. Imagine when they hear that. When I go to the hospital, I know those people. I know Helen, I know Tran. I've had to see them cry, worried, telling me, please, Tony, do something, help. There's only so much I can do. I'm one person. And it's very difficult to see these people in vulnerable states to cry because, they're in these hospitals and they feel that the people that rule these hospitals, they don't care about them. And if anything, they probably wish they would just go away and die so they can close that unit. So please, CPMC, allow future patients for subacute. Keep it open. Do the right thing for once. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I'll call some additional names: Zeke Montellano, Ingrid Merriweather, and Katie Rose.
Commissioners, Director. I'm Katie Rose. I'm here on behalf of California Nurses Association and the Coalition for Healthcare, Housing, Jobs, and Justice. So I'm going to go back to one of the points that we raised as a coalition earlier, which is the question of transit and subsidized transit. We're not satisfied with CPMC's statement that it's difficult to get people out of their cars. We feel that more work needs to be done. Less than half of the employees who actually reside in San Francisco are currently taking part in this subsidized transit program. So we need to know more detailed information, and we urge the city to ask CPMC to present more detailed information about the exact types of outreach and encouragement to employees that is currently being done beyond weekly reminders. I think it was described as a weekly announcement and transit fares. We would like to know how, in material terms, this program is being promoted to employees. In addition, I want to again reiterate and join in with the voices of other people who come to the microphone today that we urge you to pay close attention to the ongoing issue of staffing in the SNF and subacute units. This will come up again and again. We're keeping careful watch on what's going on. It's our impression that CPMC has deliberately reduced staff and therefore the level of care. We are very concerned about this, and we urge you to keep a close eye on this. We also want to reiterate that it is our priority that CPMC make a commitment not just to the current patients that are in the units, but that it makes a commitment to keep the unit open, thriving, and accepting new patients going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Kim Cavalloni, National Union of Healthcare Workers. I want to express my thoughts regarding the DA and some of the issues that were brought up by our fellow coalition members, H2J2. One of the things that's before us today, we have a decision to make. Are we going to side with the patients, the community, and labor, or are you going to side with CPMC? It's that simple of an issue. CPMC will do the bare minimum. They've proven that. But a hospital is a tax-exempt facility. They don't pay taxes. There is an expectation, an absolute right expectation, that they are going to serve the community and serve the patients. They're keeping 24 patients but throwing another 22 out the window. Someone needs to speak for them. And we have a decision today, each and every one of you, as a commissioner of this city, to speak up for the residents at Swindells, to speak up for the residents and the families who are not here today, who have yet to find a way to get their message out. CPMC is not serving the community. CPMC is not doing the right thing. You have an absolute right to expand your ability and criticize CPMC here today. You have a right to take a stand against them. You have a right to say, I expect better from a hospital. You don't pay taxes. Your one obligation is to take care of patients. And clearly you are not. They want to take these profits, perhaps buy a new Tesla. We don't care. There are things that they absolutely need to do. They need to keep Swindells open. They need to participate and open up more SNF beds. They have an obligation to increased transportation amongst the campuses. You know, we feel strongly that there are things that they could do to increase their Medi-Cal patient rates. They can increase transportation. They can hire ambassadors to help move these people through the system. These are people who have not previously had experiences there. They should be spending more money on these issues, and they are not. In fact, they refuse. They have fought our coalition every step of the way. They don't even like to meet with us in any way. At the facility, we represent workers. They don't even like to meet with us on any issue, but that's besides the point. But you have the opportunity to hold them accountable and make CPMC better. And that's what we're here to do. That's what we're asking you to do. So please, speak up for the patients. Speak up for the community. One day you may need to be there, and all these people may not be here to fight for you. So please, step up to the plate.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I'm Mark Aronson. I'm a professor emeritus at UC Hastings College of the Law and the former director of the Community Economic Development Clinic, which was heavily involved in the background in the development of the development agreement. I join in the comments of my colleagues from the San Franciscans for Healthcare, Housing, Jobs, and Justice Coalition in their comments. I want to just stress here at the end of our presentation 3 process points, essentially. First, the development agreement has many good things in it, but the development agreement is also silent on lots of issues. And the development agreement is not there to be used as an excuse by CPMC for not doing what is responsible and responsive on a whole range of issues, things like the diabetes clinic, the subacute care, the treatment of dementia patients. It, for example, addresses their participation in a process to plan for subacute care and other post-acute care issues, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be thinking about what they should do, as should the great officials and members of these commissions, in terms of what more should be done, what are additionally their responsibility. Second process point is, as you can see, the monitoring of the development agreement is not meant to be just a checklist. It is an opportunity to look seriously at what CPMC is doing in the specifics. And those are the kinds of issues that we are raising, and those are the kinds of issues we think appropriately should be addressed in the formal reports. The third process point I want to make is a more global issue. What you are seeing in CPMC's behavior is a window in terms of what are some very serious structural and systemic deficiencies in our healthcare system now, which is still primarily driven as a market-based system. Profit is not the main consideration in deciding what kinds of serious healthcare services should be provided. We are confronting a crisis, for example, in post-acute care in San Francisco, and a crisis in the availability of facilities for people with dementia. It is imperative that this kind of process also be used to shed light on those issues and to come up with some sound solutions to some very serious healthcare problems. Thank you so much, Commissioners, for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Aronson. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ms. Barbara Garcia, Director of Public Health. My name is Zeke Montejano. I'm the Clinic Director at St. Anthony's Medical Clinic. St. Anthony's Medical Clinic serves over 4,200 residents in the Tenderloin or within San Francisco boundaries. As mentioned, we do have 189 current patients that participate as a medical home at St. Anthony's, and we are aggressively doing everything possible to outreach into our community to bring those lives into St. Anthony's Medical Clinic to enroll in healthcare services. Our efforts are beyond the relationship with CPMC. As we're out and about, the options are given to our patients. We have also acquired 200 additional lives that have registered and enrolled through San Francisco Health Plan, and another 50 lives through Anthem Blue Cross. So even though the numbers don't look as impressive as perhaps you're looking to compare to 1,500 lives, we are in our community educating our patients and allowing them to enter into a healthcare network. The St. Anthony Dining Room feeds 3,200 meals, provides 3,200 meals a day to residents of the Tenderloin and San Franciscans who seek and have no place else to go. That is the entry point. We are there doing outreach to those individuals to invite them to register into a program to receive healthcare services. We are also out at the Graham Auditorium at outreach events. We're at Civic Center doing outreach events to encourage folks to register for healthcare services. So as a recipient of the most recent funding that CPMC has provided to us, which is definitely not indicative of the checkmark process, because this is a need that I came personally to CPMC and addressed, they were able to provide the funding for us to hire an additional outreach and enrollment worker, and we are grateful for that participation, that collaborative opportunity to fund our efforts. In 2009, we were at a verge of closing our doors and again came to CPMC seeking an opportunity to continue our healthcare services. At that time, over 4,200 lives may have been displaced, but thankfully, because of the strong partnership we have with the Department of Public Health and CPMC, today we are continuing to provide healthcare services to the most needed San Franciscans, and in a way that CPMC has allowed us in our collaborative relationship to restore health and human dignity. And we are thankful to their partnership and to the work that they do in the Tenderloin to support the work that we do at St. Anthony Foundation to help our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. And I don't have any additional speaker cards, but if there are members of the public who haven't spoken who would like to, please line up on the screen side of the room. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ingrid Merriweather, and I'm the President and CEO of Merriweather & Williams. And I'd like to thank Herrera Bolt and the Commission for the opportunity to share a bit about our experience as one of Herrera Bolt's small local businesses on the CPMC Van Ness and Gary project. Our firm was originally engaged shortly after construction start to provide insurance administration support, a scope inherently part of our firm's risk management services department. After demonstrating our technical capacity and performance, we were extended an additional opportunity to assist the project team in implementing and administering a unique parking logistics program to help mitigate the impact of parking demands by the project labor force. Our experience with Herrera Bolt has been par none as respects a true partnership, one where we received additional opportunities and one of mutual respect. Both from our own direct experience and our other role or perspective as the administrator of the city's surety bond program, something we've done for the last 20 years, which is also serves as an advocate for more conducive small local business engagement. We've been nothing but impressed by Herrera Bolt's team's authentic commitment to small local business participation, including promotion and growth, opportunities once demonstrable performance takes place, and really the true intent of the city's small local business inclusion requirements. Thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you, Herrera Bolt, for a true partnership and including our firm as well as many other small local businesses in the project opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open it to commissioner comments and questions. Maybe, President Chow, we could start with health commissioners, if that's okay with you.
Surely, health commissioners, any questions at this point to any of the speakers or clarification from staff? At the moment, seeing none, why don't we start with, go back to your planning commissioners, please.
Okay. Planning commissioners? Any comments or questions?
I'll just ask maybe a direct question to CPMC. Address the Swindell Family Center's, the current situation there and what plans are, what they might be, what they could be?
Sure. So we shared in the Prop Q hearing around the subacute closure and at a full Board of Supervisors hearing a few weeks ago that we did, in fact, inform the families earlier this year that with the Cal campus closing, we would be closing the Swindells program. We wanted to talk to them first. We thought that gave a long leeway for us to continue that conversation with them. And in fact, that is happening. The manager of that program is someone I think they would even share. They have great amount of trust and respect in. And he continues to have conversations with families individually and families as a group so that we can figure out what might be the best transition plan for any families that should need care at such time that that unit would close. The projected timing we were looking at that point was late 2018. And we are already talking with other providers in San Francisco for a group solution, should that be something we can work out and is amenable to families. So we understand the situation there. We understand the challenge this presents to those families and the patients, and we're going to continue to work with them to hopefully find a solution that's acceptable to all.
Okay, good. So it sounds like it's fluid, moving parts and pieces.
Yes.
But hopefully those families do find some transition.
Yeah.
Commissioner Koppel.
Yeah, hi, and wanted to talk about something today which is near and dear to me, coming from the labor background. I wanted to just touch again on what is happening with City Build in relation to this project, both on the job site with construction jobs and then in the office, also with receptionist positions and whatnot. I hope that people do not overlook the benefit that City Build is providing to the residents of San Francisco. Again, before I kind of keep going, I want to thank CPMC and Herrero Bolt, who is the general contractor for the job, if some people don't know. All the staff that's been involved, the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and City Build specifically with its Evans Street campus that ties in also with City College. Congratulations to Mr. Arce for his recent appointment, and I think we got the right person for the job to lead this charge for us. I can't state enough that, you know, we're giving San Francisco residents not just a temporary job, but we're giving them a career that will sometimes guarantee retention for the life of their career. We are training students in this pre-apprenticeship program to gain them entrance into official state-approved apprenticeship programs with the building trades. So this couldn't be more important. You know, we're not just providing jobs temporarily. We're going to give these kids, these men, these women that live in San Francisco more often than not in disadvantaged neighborhoods where they don't necessarily have the immediate access to gain entrance into these training programs. They're guaranteed a good wage. They're guaranteed health benefits. They're guaranteed a retirement. Some of these things are not typically guaranteed in the construction industry, so it shouldn't be overlooked when we're doing that here as a city. Just about a month ago, we had a press conference at the Evans Street campus with Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Mayor Ed Lee. So I don't see Ms. Pelosi here very often, and so it was a proud moment for all of us, I think, to have her visit our training center and see that we're doing the hands-on training in the classroom and on little mini job sites to prepare our residents to have careers that will not just build buildings, but build hospitals for us. I mean, there's not much more of a technical building you can imagine than a hospital. So not only are you going to want your later on employees that manage and run the building to be trained, but you're going to want the people who build the building to be trained and skilled and know what they're doing to ensure a better product for the city. And then in relation to what we as planning commissioners sometimes see, we talk a lot about housing and a lot about displacement and the fact that people can't afford housing a lot of times. And often these people are born and raised and live here in the city, and they sometimes can't find a way to stay here. So these good paying jobs, this training that the city is providing is a very good anti-displacement tool for our residents that will enable them to stay here when they're actually from here. And so a lot of times we're seeing up to 20% of the tradespeople facing displacement, having to move further and further away from their homes. And it's programs like City Build that enable our residents to stay here in the city.
Thank you. Commissioner Pading, please.
David Pading with the Health Commission. I first of all want to thank CPMC and congratulate you for, I think, many of your successes on this year's annual report. CPMC is such an important and large part of our health system. It's really important that we see these successes, since your success is really the success of much of our health system. I would include among those successes the workforce development report. Healthcare, I think, is one of the third or within the top 3 hires in the city, and that we're hiring and training within healthcare at all skill levels, I think is just a wonderful news. And again, thank you for your participation on that. I also want to thank you for your community benefits contribution, the larger dollar amounts this year versus last year, as well as your participation on our San Francisco HIP Planning Council. I think that PMC's, again, broad-based community contributions are both wonderful and excellent, and just very happy to have you as a partner. And then lastly, for the progress made in finding partners in the community in the Tenderloin. I know that was been a difficult project, and I know there was an issue last year, and that having made the progress with NEMS and St. Anthony's is a great step forward. They're both well-known community partners and well-respected within the city network of services. That said, I have 3 questions. One is regarding the NEMS and St. Anthony's partnership. I was wondering if maybe, is it Mr. Massoud, if you might be able to come on up and just speak to what actually will that look like on a services basis? I understand St. Anthony's will offer maybe the primary care aspect of the network, but will PMC be offering hospital-based services for that network, and just maybe some of the details of what that looks like for residents in the Tenderloin that might subscribe to NEMS or St. Anthony's?
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Emily Webb. I'm the Director of Community Health Programs at CPMC, and I've been working with both NEMS and St. Anthony's to set this partnership up. So our relationship with NEMS, they are a medical services organization. They have 7 clinics in San Francisco that provide primary care. Additionally, they contract with some community-based providers, a couple solo practice providers in the Tenderloin, and St. Anthony's is one of their newest primary care sites that's part of that network. So St. Anthony's will enroll patients for primary care, and CPMC will continue our relationship with them as the specialty and hospital partner. So any hospital-based services that are necessary for patients enrolled in our St. Anthony's NEMS partnership will come to the CPMC campuses for specialty or hospital-based services.
Okay. If they need emergency room services, will that be at the PMC clinic, or which clinic would they be using?
Correct. So we're there in Network Hospital, all 4 campuses. So they would come to our emergency room, if an ambulance brought them there, or if they walked in for emergency services. So it's the full set of hospital-based services.
And so I know we have emergency rooms at PMC. There's one at Davis campus too.
Yes, correct. We have 4 emergency rooms. The California campus, the Pacific campus, the Davies campus, and the St. Luke's campus all have emergency rooms.
Okay. And then with regards to the issue of enrollment, future enrollment, I know these processes take time. Can you just tell us what the plan would be with regards to getting up to the full 1,500 person enrollment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as Krishna from the Department of Public Health mentioned, this partnership was forged at the end of 2015, which you will recognize that the Affordable Care Act largely expanded in 2014. So we were a little bit behind a major expansion effort that happened in the city around enrollment. So I think there's a number of competing issues which is the reason why we haven't gotten to 1,500. That's certainly one of the reasons. I think there's outreach efforts that we've been trying to work on, but there's also, a number of people had already enrolled in a Medi-Cal partnership by then. So as Zeke, who's the clinic manager, recognized, we've been trying to educate patients on their options for enrolling in this partnership, but also respecting that patients have a choice. And so if they so choose to be a part of the San Francisco General Network through St. Anthony's, then they can maintain that care relationship that many of the St. Anthony's patients have had for years.
I assume these would be mostly Medicaid, Medi-Cal patients. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so if they are Medicaid, Medi-Cal, but they receive some of their specialty care, including emergency room at PMC, would you count that against your community benefits dollars, or would you just look at them as straight Sutter plan members?
So the way that we account for in the development agreement, the Medi-Cal lives is through the unduplicated patient commitment through the baseline. So those patients that we're seeing at St. Anthony's through this partnership would be captured in the about 43,000 number that we shared in reporting. In terms of our financial reporting, the losses around the care provided to those members would be captured under the Medi-Cal shortfall dollar amount that is financially reported by all hospitals.
Okay, but you would still be continuing your community benefits, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So second question, if you don't mind, a slightly different focus, looking at the St. Luke's dialysis unit. So with regards to the dialysis unit, I know that you hired a dietitian, but I think what we heard last year was that there was 4 RNs or LVNs that were let go that were Spanish speaking. So I was wondering, with regards to providers who do the dialysis itself, whether you will have bilingual staff, or if any of your current staff are bilingual, bicultural.
Commissioner, I believe they were. This was the issue of diabetic clinic.
The diabetic clinic.
Yeah, diabetic clinic, not a dialysis center.
Wasn't there a dialysis clinic last year?
Not on the development
okay.
agreement. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so the diabetes clinic at the St. Luke's campus, yes, we have hired a Spanish-speaking registered dietitian and certified diabetic educator that is providing clinical services on a one-on-one basis to patients, and then also we've initiated group classes in Spanish with using that new staff member. So that is an enhanced language access than what we had last year, which was most of the clinical services were provided through translation and interpreter services.
Okay. And then last question is with regards to the Swinnell closure of it's a residential Alzheimer unit, is that correct? I might ask you just to describe those services so that we have a better understanding of what actually is closing. And then I guess the question would be, are you scheduled for a ProdQ hearing regarding those services with us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not an expert on the care that's provided at Swindells, but I can tell you it's a residential care unit. So there's not healthcare services provided there. It's a residential-based unit, and then healthcare services are provided through home health agencies or other partners that come in, to the best of my understanding. And so it's licensed through the Department of Social Services, and we will, notify the commission and follow all regulatory processes when we do get to the place of formally closing that unit, and that will include a PropQ hearing.
So it's not hospital-based services, and it's not nursing care. It sounds like it's residential care.
Correct. It's residential care.
All right. So again, I want to just conclude and just again thank you for your diligence in meeting the requirements as well as the successes that you reported, and personal request perhaps at some point taking a tour of St. Luke's again as an important hospital in the city would be nice to see, and sharing your success in getting these buildings and operations up and running. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore.
There are two conversations in this room, and I want to first acknowledge everybody who spoke. I also want to appreciate Commissioner Koppel's breakdown and appreciation of the progress in labor and what it's really doing. I'm very impressed by that. The testimony, that is the human side of the conversation, that's why I'm talking about two conversations in the room, is why I'll be looking for this Commission's comments and guidance. I am greatly disturbed by the public speaking about the imminent crisis of care for the elderly, the imminent crisis of Alzheimer's and how we deal with it, including post-acute care and skilled nursing beds, which are seems to be a diminishing breed. I am not in the healthcare business. I watch what you have been doing for the last 11 years. We went through many difficult years of discussing the hows and whys and when. For the first time, we're hearing something on the when side, because some of the, or many of the criteria that need to be addressed have been addressed. To what extent will be your judgment more than ours? We are here to listen to you, particularly in the last few weeks, starting with the Board of Supervisors on September 12th, the discussion about skilled nursing and subacute care is something to which I do not have an answer and would like to hear from you, because this is the big elephant standing in the room. And there is indeed the performance criteria of a corporation performing, and I'm all ready to accept your judgment that indeed the minimum, maximum criteria have been met. But the other questions are far larger, because in the end, CPMC, with its performance and its development agreement, will be only one health care provider in a city where there are apparently significant deficiencies, as they were summarized by a number of our public speakers. So I'm looking for you to perhaps pick up that part of the conversation, if I may.
Okay. Commissioner Sanchez, before I answer Commissioner Moore, I'll ask Commissioner Sanchez, please.
No, did you want to respond to our Commissioner?
Yeah, just let me respond briefly that the issue of skilled nursing and subacute has been a topic for the last several months at the Health Department, beginning also with the Prop Q hearing. As you know, the Prop Q hearing is where facilities that are under the Prop Q, which includes CPMC, must notify and have a public hearing on decreases of services that they will be instituting. So during that period of time, we have taken up the issue of the capacity of the city for subacute and for SNF. These are all different categories of post-acute care. A post-acute care task force had been established after the report that you heard in 2014 that was required from the DA that, in fact, we received, and then created this task force working with the hospital council and with the department to create a plan for what to do in terms of the imminent loss of subacute and skilled nursing services that now, with our increasing aging population, may well be needed. During the course of that committee, the committee then did take up a more limited vision, but following our hearings has expanded their work to include how to deal with the subacute problem with the closure of the CPMC subacute unit that, as you know, was not called for in the development agreement, and for which, however, the Health Commission is requesting that CPMC recognize that earlier, prior to the DA, that the Health Commission had asked that there be approximately 100 SNF beds still available for the Sutter system that would not impact upon the remainder of the community. That still remains a goal from the Commission to have as part of the task that we have continued continue to monitor and ask the department to work with CPMC, who has agreed that they would continue to work, along with the hospital council, in terms of finding a resolution to this, which I think partly you heard today, in terms of looking for additional SNF capability and subacute capability in San Francisco, with the possibility of some sort of partnership between the city, the private hospitals, all those who are involved, so that the city could have access to these important post-acute services. So I hope that does answer Commissioner Moore. We will be further charging our department to continue that effort. We have reports scheduled to be coming back to the Commission to respond to this very important need. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes. I would just like to follow up pertaining to the discussions and, more importantly, I think the concerns, in many ways compliments of the fact that CPMC, and in particular, we've heard over a number of meetings, the excellent quality of care St. Luke's has provided pertaining to some of these units that were phased to be closed. As a matter of fact, we've heard great testimony about the exceptional skills, the communication, the ability of the staff to provide for quality of care for our patients in the SNF units and the other units at St. Luke's. And then we heard, in essence, that these programs would be no longer there. And then we saw part of the dismantling of, quote, St. Luke's. Let me just share that in this process, this community, the whole San Francisco community, I think, and also in particular, the community that St. Luke's has been serving for over 100 years, has really been a positive impact in our community, especially in the Mission District. It is, as I said, been a key partner. When things get tough in the city over the past 100 years, it was SFGH, St. Luke's, that provided the critical services to ensure that we pull together as a city, etc. Here's the part that has been sort of confusing to a number of folks that have been asked to raise questions about. Part of the marketing before was on many of the buses and in the Mission, Noe Valley, etc., saying, what a great place to have your babies come into the new unit at St. Luke's, and we will have these great services. And they were marketing this all over the communities. And then we had other marketing saying we would have this great senior center of excellence, which we all thought would be an excellent model. And then we've heard that these programs are no longer going to be available. And then we learned today that now at St. Luke's there will be a senior center of excellence at St. Luke's. Well, what does a senior center of excellence really mean? But it's not St. Luke's, it's now, I guess, Mission Burnell Heights. So evidently the mission and vision and historical importance of St. Luke's will be part of history, like the Bancroft Library statue, which is right there, St. Luke's, which moved to Berkeley many 50 years ago. So St. Luke's will be part of the history of the Mission District. This will now be Mission Burnell Heights. Is that the name, official name now, of the Mission Burnell Heights? And I assume now I was going to ask, is there any correlation between what the new mission is of Mission Burnell Heights Hospital pertaining to what St. Luke's mission was? Because St. Luke's mission was astounding.
Yeah.
And provided, and when part two is, in a center of excellence, you're talking about culturally competent health providers. You're talking about access. You're talking about quality. You're talking about a continuum of care from birth till post. I mean, services we heard today, which are all part of a center of excellence. And yet we've already dismantled part of St. Luke's, which has been a national model of healthcare. I mean, every day you almost read about all these terrible activities that are going on in treatment of seniors. And we know in San Francisco already, seniors aren't even on the radar pertaining to these housing models that could provide more SNF beds. Well, we don't need that. We know now, and the population is even growing. So the question is, the old St. Luke's, the old CPMC, are they going to provide a leadership role in addressing unique patient needs of a city and county like San Francisco, as St. Luke's did for over 100 years? Or are they going to, what? The new Center of Excellence will not include culturally competent health providers, will not compute access, will not compute, all these variables that these people discussed today were on the radar. So I wish if you could just clarify that a little bit and share with us what the new mission will be pertaining to what the old mission was.
Yes, so our mission remains the same. There's no change in our commitment to delivering the highest quality care with culturally and linguistic appropriate service. There is absolutely no change to that. The Senior Center of Excellence is something it's in the DA. We've said all along that was going to be at Mission Bernal. It's one of the things we've met with the coalition to discuss in more detail. That will be comprised of a HELP program that exists now on the Davies campus. It'll be aided by a special type of unit at Mission Bernal, an acute care for the elderly unit where staff are specially trained and the physical spaces are specifically designed to help aid that population. And we're also talking about adding some specialty type of service within the ED at Mission Bernal. So the combination of those things constitute a Senior Center of Excellence whose metrics and goals are to decrease falls, decrease length of stay, and decrease admission, because the best place for those people is not in a hospital, it's in their community. And then we're also working on additional programmatic support that we could develop that will help bridge the handoff from the services we provide in the hospital focused on that patient and the services and environment they're going to go to when they go back to the community. So creating a stronger bridge between those two is something we're continuing to develop. As far as the name goes, we shared information about a year ago about some research that we did. If you think back to the transition slide I showed, by the time we're done, every single one of our campuses, save the Davies campus, will have been impacted. We've got 2 brand new hospitals standing up, 1 hospital closing down, and our main acute care hospital going to outpatient care. That's a tremendous amount of confusion about where services are, where doctors are, where somebody should go for care that went here today, and we're going to ask them to go there tomorrow. And right now, our naming construct is very inconsistent. And so we took the opportunity looking at this, and we went out and talked to San Franciscans. We did 2 waves of research, one to gauge an understanding of if we were to rename all of our enterprise in San Francisco, what would be the way that would be most helpful to you to understand where you need to go. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that a neighborhood construct is what people said far and away would be the most helpful. Then we did another round of research with 10 focus groups of San Franciscans of all types, and said if neighborhood construct is going to be the most helpful, tell us what you would call these hospitals based on where they sit and what your understanding is. And where that hospital sits is at the confluence of the Mission, Bernal Heights, and Noe Valley. But following a precedent that had been established by the Mission Bernal Merchants Association, there's starting to become an understanding of that community, that little confluence of neighborhoods is a pocket being called Mission Bernal. So people in these focus groups felt that by adopting that naming construct, it helped them understand that we weren't talking about the Mission at the 16th Street end of the Mission, but this was a location down in that corner, and people would have an understanding of where they need to go.
Thank you. Just to add one thought here, that as you shared in particular the Senior Center of Excellence and how the patients would be followed and could go back, quote, to their community. What we're hearing, but what we know is there's no community where we could provide these services presently with the same medical model, social worker model that is now part of your key program, which means we need to look at, both commissions need to look at how we could provide unique housing for SNF beds and for rehab, because you're going to be doing cardiology. I mean, my gosh, you're going to need specific rehab. And many of the top institutions have step-down units, et cetera, built in that local community where they could go and enjoy. And there's a lot of space around there. The old Sears parking lot across. You know, I mean, there's a number of unique models that would offer unique jobs for training, but built in the culture and in the communities there, not just that little perimeter, but all the way down to the basically Latino Cultural Center. Go down there, go past the 18th, go down to 20. What I'm saying is there are so many unique models that could be generated to address this critical need in our city where seniors play a significant role and are going to be enhanced here. And we have real challenges. And I was hoping, and I still believe, that through our task force and in partnerships, we could come in with some unique facilities to provide these services which are at risk right now. And we're dismantling a best practice model, you know, that you've been involved in as a partner, that will no longer be available in the city, county of San Francisco, and that bothers us.
Yeah, I wasn't using the word community to reflect a step-down process. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Karsner, please.
I think there's much to be celebrate here in terms of the progress moving forward. But I do think that there is the comments made by the folks from Hastings about using this as an opportunity to more than just check a box is really something to consider, because there are several things that were alluded to. For instance, the hiring of the bilingual educator in the clinic, and the fact that there was a discussion and there were recommendations made, and there were several recommendations about how to address the issues of diabetic care at the St. Luke's facility. And some of those recommendations were taken and some of those weren't. So that would be an opportunity to explain the rationale behind what worked and what didn't. And you had a rationale. You said you were going to do this study and these are the data. The same is true how long it took up until August 17 for the diabetic group with the Spanish speaking, that if you could explain the process of that, I think it would have been more reflective of the difficulties. The other example is care in the Tenderloin. The information was, it's hard, but upon questioning, we got more information from the clinic director about the kinds of things that have gone into the outreach. So to be proactive in explaining, because it makes it sound like you just want to get through the report as opposed to really reflect upon the processes and the lessons learned. So as you think about this moving forward, I would urge the more transparency, not just in the outcome, but how you got there and how you're reflecting back could really go a long way to help everyone feel that this is a process that is thoughtful and reflective of high quality care in the city. Thank you.
Commissioner Loyce, please.
I will yield to my colleague on my left who's been trying to figure out a way to get in. I do want to speak, though.
Okay, Commissioner Burnell.
Thank you,
then
Commissioner
we'll
Loyce.
get back to
I think I speak for my colleagues on the Health Commission here that we place a very high priority on culturally and linguistically appropriate services and care, and specifically to the St. Luke's Diabetes Clinic. We had heard about the situation of the loss of Spanish language capacity, both from CPMC and then a lot of concerns from the community. And among the measures that were put in place where progress on the agreements are being made was a survey. A question on the survey, on the bilingual patient satisfaction survey, and I'm wondering if you have results from that question being posed and what you've learned from that.
So we do have survey results. I think staff mentioned the specific point about the results not reflecting that people have a concern about access to the clinic because of a receptionist being there or not. What we also see in those surveys is a high degree of satisfaction with the service that's being offered, and no significant concerns about cultural linguistic appropriateness. And we can continue to follow up with staff and monitor that information. It's something we try to collect from every patient and collect repeatedly over time, and so we can continue to monitor that with staff.
Commissioner Lois.
I want to add my voice of thanks to folks who provided this information today for us to review and evaluate. But I also have a question, and it has to do with the City Build hiring program, entry level, and the First Source hiring programs. And the question simply is that when we think about health in the community, we think about health and wellness for the whole community. When we think about services that we provide as a health department, we begin to look at the notion of trauma-informed care. The communities that you're talking about are communities that have been traumatized in a variety of ways. And so and part of helping folks get through trauma is employment. So having said that, though, it's not so much that I'm wondering about the employment. I'm wondering about 1 year from now. Those folks who've entered, are they still employed? And is that helping to help a community recover from the traumas that exist in their communities?
Thank you, Commissioner. Joshua.
Before you answer, if you have data today, great. In the next report, make sure that data is there as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Joshua Arce, City Build Director. We're on the construction side, and in a minute I'll ask my colleague Lowell if he can speak to your comment, which is about the retention in terms of looking at the long-term impact on the community. I'll just say out the gate, before I ask my colleague Lowell to speak to our ability, which I know in construction we can present the retention, and I believe we can do the same with respect to the end-use positions. But I do think both your comment, and we heard this from Jobs with Justice and the coalition as well from Gordon Marr, that reporting the retention of entry-level hires is a great idea. So let me just say that we can do that on the construction side. If I can turn to my colleague on the end-use side to speak to that, because this is a great comment, Commissioner. Hello.
Hello, Commissioners. Lowell Rice with the Office of Economic Workforce Development on the non-construction side of compliance with the DA for CPMC. And we are in discussion in our office about putting forth such a program to comply, to see where the retention is on these hires. Just to give you a little background, there have been 247 hires from the Workforce Referral Network in the city of San Francisco since this project began. And we do not have a clear understanding of where all these 247 hires, where they've been retained. They all started out as per diem on-call positions. So that's a very good question, and we are looking at that. Thank you.
And just a quick last comment. I had the chance to talk with our compliance manager, Ken Nim, my colleague, around the construction retention for the City Build graduates. Generally speaking, 85% of the time our construction graduates from City Build continue to be employed to this day. You got to meet some of them today here, hear their testimony, but we talked about our ability to have a project-based retention type of report and look at the long-term impact, positive impact on those neighborhoods, and that's something that we definitely look forward to doing and presenting back to the Commission. Thank you.
Thanks. And just a question on the transportation and pedestrian improvements that are being made. We often see at planning that they lag behind development. It's a challenge we have on larger development areas. Does anybody have any information? Have those improvements in the neighborhood, because it's obviously a highly trafficked neighborhood and will be more so when CPMC opens. But are those improvements either done or scheduled to be done prior to the opening?
Morning, Commissioners. Vahram Masahian, CPMC.
we're partnering with the MTA on all of the pedestrian safety and streetscape improvement projects. Venice and Geary streetscape improvement projects will be happening at the tail end of the project. We also have to dovetail it with the Venice BRT project. So it's required a considerable amount of coordination on our with our construction teams, both on the Venice MOB side and the hospital. But it's anticipated that we have the streetscape improvement projects done for when we are open for at Venice and Geary.
Okay. And what's the time between your opening and completion of Venice BRT?
I'm not sure. I can't speak to the MTA's schedule, but we are trying to coordinate those. I know that we have MTA staff here who can maybe answer that question. But at St. Luke's Mission Bernal, we have streetscape improvement projects as well there on Valencia, Cesar Chavez, San Jose Avenue, 27th Street. That will be. The DA has specified the streetscape improvement projects by phase there. So the phase 1 projects are anticipated to be open when we complete the hospital and plaza and the San Jose Plaza adjacent to the hospital. We also have a streetscape improvement project, which is a side kind of project at it's called Guerrero Park, or San Jose Guerrero Park. It's a parks to playgrounds or a parking lot to play. I can't remember the term the planning department uses, but we're having a kickoff meeting for that with our architects in the department on October 4th.
Okay.
But it's anticipated that that project also will be completed by end of phase 1, St. Luke's project.
Okay, thank you. And just on, somebody made a comment on the commute survey results. Hopefully we'll see those improve because I don't think the numbers were terribly impressive. You do have a significant amount of San Francisco employees that reside in San Francisco, but still high numbers of those that drive alone to work. So hopefully we do see those numbers improving significantly in our next report. So thank you.
I think you had Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, no, that was me.
Oh, that was
But
you.
I'm
sorry.
I just didn't by name. Was it up?
Okay. Commissioners, are there further comments? If not, from our side, let me just conclude from the Health Commission side what we find and thank Commissioner Moore for asking. Certainly, as you've brought up the issue of subacute and acute, I am also reminded that this may well require a collaboration with the planning department in terms of what might be needed or what efforts could be done in order to alleviate some of the obstacles that might come about if there were, in fact, issues that arose due to the planning codes and all. So we're mindful of that. Let me say on behalf of our commission that we are pleased that the staff has been able to find that the DA is in a substantial completion or compliance, rather, for this year on the part of all the health issues. But I think as the testimony also brought out, as our fellow commissioners did, that we are quite concerned that we're not only building a building and therefore checking boxes, as everybody is saying, but that once these buildings are finished, they are going to be buildings that deliver the care that CPMC has brought forth to us in the service distinction lines. And that within that, we are going to have to see that this actually does meet the needs of our city, meets the needs of our residents, meets the needs of the neighborhoods that we have spoken about, and for which these facilities had historically been, as their first mission, serving in these communities. And even the use of the geographic names, which continues to imply that the important role of these hospitals relate not just to a regional or national expertise by CPMC, but the work for our community, the delivery of care to our residents. And so while we're pleased that CPMC is in technical compliance with the DA and that the recent actions of CPMC in regards to the subacute unit show that they can listen and are interested in trying to work with the patients and residents. And now we have another example brought forth to us today about Swindell, and we hope that before there be a Prop Q hearing, that there actually be also some sort of resolution that would be important for the patients who are there. That we do need to continue to see that the services that we will be receiving from CPMC, that the city will be getting, will in fact be those that are culturally competent and really reflect the needs of our communities. And for that then, knowing that CPMC has been in cooperation with our department in terms of looking at cultural competency, I would ask that the Director of Health, our department, and CPMC continue to look at that so that we have a checkbox saying all the cultural standards of class, for example, are in compliance, or that we're passing the different accrediting bodies for this. But we need to go further than that. The question is, in fact, then, as we are checking off the boxes, do such services meet the needs of our public? And you heard that a little bit here about the issue of the receptionist and St. Luke's. Is that survey really meaningful, or are the people who answer the survey satisfied, but there might be a group of people that really can't access even the survey because they weren't able to come in because of a lack of feeling that they could come in and speak to somebody about their need and make an appointment. I just bring that as an example, and that we will continue to want to work with CPMC on the issue of cultural competence. We'd like to see that there be further information than that I've met all these standards. But what type of acceptance did the public have in regards to how we were meeting those standards in these facilities? I think that's just one example of what we would also like to continue to look at, which of course is our subacute and SNF crises that we had spoken about earlier. And that the work that CPMC has done with us and with the Hospital Council and the PAC has been very important, but that we now need to come to looking for resolutions of this. And that in the coming year, we're hoping then that a report could come back to this committee, yes, outside of the DA, but showing a community interest of how we were going to be able to address this with solutions in hand. So I look forward then to really the completion of these facilities. They are going to be state-of-the-art. They're going to be an asset to our residents, but they can only fulfill their fullness as truly assets to us if we are able to then have these facilities understand the needs of our communities and understanding the goals, of course, that CPMC also has, and in collaboration build a strong CPMC-Sutter relationship and services that really help the entire health community of the city. And we would look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore.
President Chow, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Would it be possible, because I didn't hear the word, that in your ongoing deliberations you'll include the discussion about the need for residential Alzheimer's care? I myself just came back from a visit to old friends in Germany, where I met the father of my long-time friend, who I saw a few years ago as a healthy, interesting man in his 60s. And as I came back a month ago, he could not even recognize his own daughter anymore because he was affected by Alzheimer's at a very rapid rate. And what was presented to us today touched me in a way, just having gone through this incredible experience of seeing this man, who I knew very well, who does not even recognize his own daughter anymore. And for that reason, I would like to ask if you would be able to continue that discussion, particularly as it was represented to us today by the Swindell's family unit caring for Alzheimer's patients.
Yes, Commissioner Murray, I believe that would fall into first, definitely a post-acute care issue, and certainly number two, because of Swindell being part of the CPMC system, that it should arise to us on a Prop Q. And so I'm hoping that sort of as a preventive and preemptive strike, that we could look at that issue also as part of our needs in post-acute care for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a subtlety in the way you use these words, which I'm not that familiar with, but thank you very much.
I'm hoping not to be too subtle, but I think the bottom is that, yes, we'd like that explored also, and we certainly will take that opportunity. We really do look towards to a partnership, not just only with CPMC, but with our entire healthcare community to be able to answer these questions in a public-private collaborative partnership. While subacute and SNF are sort of on the front burners, there's the entire broad range of services that our city is going to be needing and that we hope we can continue to address as part of our duties on the Health Commission. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you to the city staff and CPMC for your ongoing work, and thank you to members of the public who took time to come here. We recognize many of you were here advocating for the crafting of this TA, so thank you for participating again in its implementation. So with that, we'll adjourn this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.